All right, guys. Welcome back to the struggle with Candice Thompson. I am Candice Thompson. We've been away for a couple of weeks because the holidays. Was it the holidays? Didn't feel like it at all.
Did not.
It was just regular ass days. That's what it felt like. But someone told me it was the holidays, so I guess I'll trust them. The struggle is a podcast where I normally have my friends come on and we talk about things that we struggle with. However, in light of all the insanity that's happening in the world with the ongoing race wars and pandemics, we like to keep it light and just talk about things that are topical and fun and personal stories that make us laugh. So to my loyal listeners and viewers, thank you for coming back. If you have not subscribed to new people, make sure you do that. We're on all podcast platforms. Rate and review us on iTunes. And last but not least, if you are listening to this regularly and you haven't told somebody, pay it forward, tell somebody. And I'm Jokes by Candice on social media. Now I'm going to introduce my co-host, who looks different again for some reason. I can't keep up with his facial hair. I don't know. His hair, the only thing that's consistent about your hair on your head is your eyebrows. It's the only thing that I can rely on to be there in the same fashion every time. Mal Hall, everybody.
Hey everybody. I'm here. Happy New Year. Uh I cut my hair. I had my friend cut my hair while I was house sitting in LA, and he's not a barber, so it was fucked up.
Eric?
And now no, my friend Joseph
Oh, okay.
cut my hair, and it didn't look good. So I've been wearing a lot of hats, and now I'm in this weird in between phase where I'm still scared to go to the barber, so I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna have an afro again in no time. My social media is at Mal Hall. My website is malhall.com, which is useless at this point because I have no dates.
There's nothing going on.
And Mal Hall TV on YouTube. Every once in a while, I post a throwback clip of me performing comedy on there. So
The good old days,
Candice, yeah, they're all throwback Thursdays.
for sure.
Candice, who is our guest?
Oh man, I'm so excited to have this lady. She's so fucking funny. And I don't even know if have we met? We will discuss. I don't know if you've ever met in person. This is the first time we're okay. I want to say it was at the Comedy Store.
Yeah, it was.
Perfect. Who knows anymore? Anyway, so funny. And we've bonded now over Twitter. Bridget Phetasy, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Where can people find you? Where can people find you?
Well, for now, you can find me on Twitter at Bridget Phetasy, and you can find me at YouTube, Phetasy, and I have a podcast, Walk-Ins Welcome, which you can find on all podcast platforms for now.
How do you spell Phetasy?
Oh, Phetasy. It's a word I made up.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Because I've never heard this a last name Phetasy before.
Everyone's like, is that Greek? I'm like, no, it's a word I made.
No, what is that? Where did you get that from and why?
It's fiction.
Yeah.
PH.
Fake news. So back in 2005, I started a company called Phetasy, and it was the word I made up was to explain this phenomenon which the world has now caught up with, which is a moment that feels like God is laughing at you, or irony squared. The easiest way of describing it is when parody becomes reality or reality becomes parody. This made no sense to anybody until everybody started saying beyond parody. And the headline started reading like we were living in an Onion article. And now suddenly people are like, if only there was a word for this. I'm like, there is. I made it up. And then
Phetasy.
It's a Phetasy. So, and now it's great. People online are like, is this a Phetasy? I'm like, yep, that's a Phetasy. Just crazy. It's like when irony doubles back on itself and becomes literal, because people were always misusing irony.
And, for sure. Like it's coincidence most of the time, and they say it's irony.
Right. Or a coincidence that proves there's no such thing as coincidence. It's kind of that weird, like, double paradox. And
for sure.
So I just made this up, and it was a greeting card company and t-shirts. And then I went bankrupt. It's okay. So in 2006, when social media started around then, 2005, 2006, everyone was like, you need to get on social media. Me being the deeply skeptical human being that I am by nature, I didn't want to use my real name. And I thought since I was trying to get my brand out, I might as well just take my company as my last name. And then the brand went bankrupt, and I kept that name. Basically, I just considered it my online stage name because it felt, I was like, this is all very much like all the world is literally a stage now. And then I started doing stand-up in 2010. Somebody dared me to do it, and I used Bridget Phetasy as my stage name because I was working with kids at the time and teaching yoga privately and at like school, like those super rich schools that are like one-on-one learning.
Yeah.
And my whole first routine that I ever did was about my porn addiction. So I was like, this is an easy way for me to keep these things separate. Although those worlds collided eventually. So that's how it ended up becoming really just my stage name. And then I used it when I started writing for Playboy, because the first piece I ever wrote for Playboy was why I love giving blowjobs.
Well, okay, I'm gonna need to hear the reason for that because I absolutely disdain it.
Oh, really?
Well, it's mostly because I have TMJ, so it hurts. It physically hurts me to do it. So I have to like meditate and do a mantra, get myself up.
Like breathe in through the nose.
Before I engage.
The dude is sitting there like, what is happening? Candice is like, you can do this. You're a strong Black woman. You can suck this dick.
Okay.
The dude is just like, what is happening?
She's like,
And I'm like, no, Candice, do the a little bit wider, a little bit wider. There we go. There we go.
Good, actually.
And that hurts.
What's this technique? You're like, I'm meditating on your D.
Yeah. You're giving dudes weird fetishes. Now they can't get it up if the girl doesn't meditate before.
You're like, bro, this last chick, she literally like meditated on my D. Like, what did she stare at it? No, she literally was breathing exercises and saying with my
and the whole shit, bro.
Oh my God. You guys. So wait, so you wrote this piece?
Yeah, so someone needed to stand up for blowjobs. So there was this piece going around that was viral, and it was like, why I don't suck dick or something like that. And it was all about like, I don't know, it was kind of ridiculous. And now it seems like, it was so cute when we were arguing about those dumb things. And
was someone else wrote that piece? Let me guess, she's a feminist.
Yeah, and she writes for Vice, so right away.
Right, we know, right.
And she wrote this piece about like why she hates sucking dick, and then I wrote, somebody had put me in touch with an editor of Playboy after I was on Twitter and I just was making jokes or whatever, and they said, hey, you should write something for I know the Playboy editor in the comedy section, and then I said, hey, I want to write a response to. I was like, someone needs stand up for blowjobs.
And I think you're the lady.
And so I wrote this piece about why I find them very empowering. I was like, I don't agree that it's something degrading. I've always felt like you literally have a guy by the balls. And so I presented my argument, and then I had to like call my dad.
PowerPoint presentation.
There's my TED Talk. Hashtag blowjobs matter.
BJM, guys, BJM.
So I had to call my dad because I didn't want him to find out, when I put it on Facebook, I didn't want him to find out from one of my aunts or uncles. So
how awkward.
And I'd been trying to be like a freelance writer for a while. And I called him and I was like, well, Dad, I have some good news and I have some bad news. Like, the good news is I sold my first piece to a big national organization, you know, like a big brand name magazine. The bad name is the bad news is like why I love sucking dick, and it's for Playboy.
Oh my God.
Didn't take it well.
Did he read it?
I think so. He wrote me an 8-page handwritten, sent by snail mail letter about how he failed me as a father. And I was like, and then that led me to write a piece called "Even My Dad Thinks I Have Daddy Issues."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh my God.
I'm like, it's not a great sign when your dad thinks you have daddy issues. He's like, I apologize for failing you.
That's amazing. You should have just written back a handwritten letter that says, sounds like somebody needs to get their dick sucked. You're a little too uptight, Dad. Calm down.
What's really funny is that he sent it by snail mail, and in it he said he didn't want me to become a pet, quote unquote, like peddler. He was worried I'd be pegged as a peddler of smut as a writer. And and I was like, I already filed my next column, Why I'm Addicted to Porn. And like, if you hadn't sent this by Crow, maybe I would have gotten this message sooner.
Too late, Dad.
Maybe email me your reservations next time, because I've already filed my next piece. I'm sure you're gonna be proud.
So he was legitimately concerned that you were just going to become like Carrie Bradshaw, but like dirty, like super X-rated.
The biggest fantasy of all is that I'm sure he probably wishes. Like, I was laughing. I was writing about this recently because I've been kind of just trying to put this whole crazy journey down on paper because it's been actually so wild. And then I'll never forget calling my dad and being like, Dad, I got my first media hit. And he was like, oh, really? That's great. Because I kind of became an accidental pundit. And I was like, yeah, it's on Ben Shapiro's show on Fox.
Hilarious.
And I'm like, I bet you wish I was still writing about blowjobs. Because my dad is like a lib.
A lib, yeah. And the only thing worse than that would be is if you were now a Trump
like,
supporter.
God damn it. I forgot to. Yeah, exactly. I was just writing this. I'm like, I bet my dad, when I moved to LA, the only thing he said was, don't get into porn. And now I was like, I bet he was wishing he also like had an addendum, like, also don't ever appear on Fox News.
Yeah, that was in fine print in the contract. So wait, back to I just want to talk a little bit more about the dick sucking really quickly, because you said you find it empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to hear a little bit more about the empowerment part. I don't feel like it's not empowering, but I just have never thought of it that way. So I would like to hear your perspective.
I think that there's just, men have to really surrender to the process. And there is something about just
like we do.
I don't know. I also just get off on giving that amount of pleasure. And it is something that I find like, I don't know, maybe it's like kind of, I'm sure it's my own psychology, but there's something I find so much strength of like giving. A man is so much at your mercy in that moment. I mean, it is, if you want a car and you're a wife, if you want like anything, those are the moments to ask, ladies, because they're just like, they will say yes to anything. Like, hey, sign this prenuptial, baby. I just think
it's not the most vulnerable situation of all.
It's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And yeah, you do like literally have them by the balls. So I think it takes an enormous amount of trust on their part. I mean, you do, I think any man who's I don't think they put too much thought into this, but you do have teeth near a dick.
Oh, for
Like,
sure. And then, you know, the cautionary tale of Lorena Bobbitt,
right.
that Lorena
Yeah.
Bobbitt story that haunts men to this day.
I mean, I know that like the little brain is doing most of the thinking, so and it overpowers probably any fear in that moment. And maybe men don't realize how much fear they should be in, but I realize it.
Well, I mean, normally when you're in that situation, you're with somebody that you have a certain
trust.
amount of trust with. Okay, it's not like you just
Not
pull
all the
someone off
time
the
though.
street
No,
and
what
go,
about
"Check this out."
hookers? Dudes
about
go
one
with
night-
hookers all the time.
What about one
Okay, I'm
night
gonna speak on
stands?
behalf of all guys that have not propositioned,
A hooker?
like not employed hookers in their life.
Yeah, but what about like the chick you picked up at the bar when we could go to bars?
Right, you don't know them.
Yeah, but it's not a thing where it's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, and then immediately you're getting your dick sucked. It's like, oh, you spend
Oh,
a certain
that's
amount of time
that's what
and
I
build
do.
a certain rapport where you're like, oh, this could be awesome. And then sometimes from experience, you're in a situation where you're like, whoa, I just felt teeth. Like I'm now terrified. I'm now no longer enjoying this because this person clearly doesn't know what they're doing or they're trying to harm me.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and then you just kind of steer clear of those situations from that point on with that person.
Yeah.
Right.
What I think, Bridget, also we're talking to Mal. Mal is definitely a good guy. So like he's not one to like just take randos home from the bar. Like
Okay.
he's never been that type.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I want, not that guys that do that, not that they're not good guys, but he's just more, what's the word I'm looking for? Conservative, traditional, right? What was
That's
that?
a very nice way to put it.
Yeah, it is. You he was raised by his mama.
There's a bunch of there's some different, as Chappelle would say, the streets would call guys like me bitch ass
Bitches.
niggas.
Yeah, I mean,
Conservative.
Conservative, yeah.
Old fashioned.
Old fashioned is good.
I like my dick sucked on the third or fourth date after I've bought a few meals and I can feel good about it.
I've been watching Bridgerton on Netflix. I have to watch it now because we're like writing on it on the show. We're like interviewing on the cast on the show this week. So I've been binge watching Bridgerton, which is about, it's a Shonda Rhimes. It's like her first Netflix show, and it's about aristocrats from like the Regency era. And basically, there's this chick who, she's the eldest daughter, and they're trying to marry her off. So they take her to this ball, and I'm like, this whole hullabaloo of like this process of finding her a mate. But there's a scene where, I mean, it's not just a scene because it's an ongoing theme because it's just that time period. But there's a scene where she goes into this garden and makes out with this guy that she's dating, and someone sees them making out. And then after that, she gets terrified because this person that saw them is, if they gossip, her life is ruined. If they find out that I kissed a man before I was married, my life is ruined.
Yeah, women had no power.
No power.
That's why I get so mad at like modern feminists. I'm like, hey, we're not property. Can we chill out? Because we were for like ever.
Forever.
For like the last 100 years. We're living in the greatest time it has ever been to be a woman in the West. So
for sure. Now let me get back to sucking these dicks.
Now let me get back to writing about how empowering dick sucking is.
Now let me get back to meditating in front of this dick.
This is the most fun I've had on a podcast in a long time.
Oh, I'm so happy. And this is what this is what we try to do.
What if that was a category on Headspace? Meditation app.
Yeah. I like it. I think we should start it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could have another business that we could bankrupt together. Let's start it.
All for it.
Now, I wanted to talk to Bridget Knight.
I am gonna pitch the empowerment angle to my fiance later though, because I think, I think that's like a very nice thing to do for me to her. Just like, look at babe, you're a powerful woman to begin with. Now, how about some more power? Think about this in the power sense.
Just get
Yep.
it to a different perspective. That's all. Just something to think about
Yeah. Look at babe, this is not for me. This is for you.
for you, because I care about you as a woman.
Yeah, it did pretty well as a piece. I don't know. Then it got memory hold.
So wait, I cannot look. Can I look this up online anywhere?
I don't know. I mean, they might have. Yeah, they might have put it back up because I mentioned it when I was on Rogan. So, like, they memory hold all my stuff, and then they have kind of like this habit of the things I mention on podcasts that are huge magically reappear. So it might be up. If not, I have a hard copy of it because I had a weird gut feeling like a month before everything came down that all my stuff was going to disappear. And I called my cousin Maggie and I was like, I think they're going to fucking memory hole me. And she screenshot.
What does that mean? Memory hole. I've never heard that before.
It's from, I think it's from, is it from 1984? It's from one of those dystopian. It's basically like the context I'm using it in is my whole entire body of work on Playboy just disappeared.
I think it is Orwell. It is 1984 memory hole. Yeah.
And so they just disappeared.
And you don't have copies on your computer that like you just had?
I mean, I have screenshots of all. Yeah, I have those, which is fine, but it's different than having like a 75 or 80 pieces that you've written for Playboy just go gone. It's like it's a huge body of work that I was proud of. It's unfortunate that I can't even now send people. I still have screenshots of all of it, and yes, I have them on my. I don't have the final edits that ended up online. I don't have those. I have my rough copies before they went to the editor.
That sucks.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all right. But I have screenshots of all of the finals that were online. So I at least have that. And we printed them and put them in like this big book. So I can still see them, but I did stuff like I interviewed men about erectile dysfunction, about going bald, about all kinds of things that men struggle with that I underestimated. And I'm upset that I can't, if a guy writes me and is like, hey, I saw. It's just weird. It's unfortunate. It was a helpful body of work for men, I think. At least that's what I heard from men.
Right.
So
well, that's unfortunate. You have such an interesting, like your whole story to me is very fascinating. Like I look at my life and I'm just like, oh, being a comic, and people would look at that and they'd be like, oh, you have such an interesting life. And I'm like, no, I'm just a comedian. I just been a funny person. But like you, like even just writing for Playboy, like that to me is like, oh shit. Like that's such an interesting thing to do that I wouldn't have even like thought. That's such a creative way to express yourself, but I never would have even been like, oh, that's something I could possibly do. But like from doing that, like you do stand up, you had your own business. Like I've done none of these things. Except the stand-up part. Like I wanted to talk to you because I also found this very fascinating because you've been very vocal about struggling with addiction in the past and then your road to sobriety. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because I think that is very like such an inspirational, but also just like how you just are able to laugh at that now, because I think laughter obviously is so important for people to overcome things. It's like a therapy for us. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that as a person who's never been addicted to anything. And I'm saying that as like a thing that I'm not proud of because I want to be addicted to something just to make me more interesting.
You're like a unicorn as a comic though. I feel like you're either in the process of getting sober or you're totally out there like on drugs and acting out. There's not many like in our space.
No, I know that that's why I just stick out, and I've always like tried to find like other people that are like me, but not really. Like
that's probably why we're friends.
You're not even a stoner.
I feel the same way.
No, I mean, look, I may have tried heroin this week after the coup. No.
If there was a time to try it, it would be.
It would be this week. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, so you guys aren't even stoners? Like, not even.
Yeah, but I'm not addicted. I wouldn't say
Not
that's an
addicted.
addiction though. So it's
Yeah.
like I'm a social smoker and drinker.
Okay.
And in the pandemic, I mean, social means my fiance will watch me get progressively drunk and stoned, but like I'm, I wouldn't say I'm addicted to either.
Okay. Yeah. So if I
Okay.
started smoking weed today, I would be a daily morning smoker like by tomorrow.
Oh wow.
Like I think weed was my really true love and the hardest one for me to quit. And I think it's so insidious. And it's still the one I miss the most more than anything. But
Right.
I also was like, I was born into a huge Irish Catholic family. I do stand up about like my family giving me a reverse intervention when I got sober because they're just Irish Catholic and they were like, wait, what? Like they do not comprehend not drinking. They're like, so what does this mean? Like
a reverse intervention
when you're not, their first thing is like, I quit drinking. They're like, what are you pregnant? They cannot comprehend. Like, did you get a DUI? Like, what? Why would you ever quit this? We're worried.
You just
about
have to say yes. I'm pregnant all the time now.
Yeah. I was like, come on. We know like no one in our family quits drinking when they're pregnant.
Those are just recommendations from the doctor.
Yeah. It's like the middle trimester you'll quit. The first 3 months you're like still just living your best life. And then you're like, shit, I'm pregnant. I better dial it back. And then the last trimester, my aunts are always like, it's cooked.
It makes the baby stronger.
Yeah. Now it's time to raise that baby's tolerance. I don't want any lightweights in this family.
Yeah. We don't need him embarrassing our family name.
Yeah, exactly.
Throwing
Your baby
up at 8.
In my family, Sid. What is it? Sid's like they're genetic.
So wait, so you tried weed was your first?
No, drinking was my first and then weed was shortly thereafter. And I always that was just like consistent through high school. And I really was like it just helped me. I moved a lot every year and a half and it helped me just shut my brain off. But also I realized that at every single school there was like a party group and that you didn't need to go really that far below the surface and like actually get to know anyone. It was like just a shallow group that was based on drinking. And so I gave up all of my aspirations and I was a really good student and I was a nerd. I was like such a little dork. And I look back now and I kind of beat myself up for not being, which is ridiculous because I was like 11 and 12, but I wanted to be cool and I wanted to be popular. And I hated so much being the new girl who was always bullied, always, this is why I hate seeing what's going on in our country. And I've always been like deeply distrustful of groups because I was bullied. I went to all kinds of different schools with all kinds of different mixes of people. And it didn't matter what color I was because I was always just a new girl and I got bullied.
Right.
Like it didn't matter where I was and whether I was in a city or in a suburb or at a private Catholic school or whatever. So I just learned to be deeply distrustful of like the mob mentality in groups in general. I hated cliques. And I also just think I became a chameleon. And was really like booze and weed were helpful at hiding who I really was, but also just hiding behind and also just assimilating and being able to go, anywhere really and just find those people. And that became my dominant personality. I just put all of my
chameleon,
but the party girl. So I kind of put all of my, it was stoner for a while, but I put all of my smarts into developing like being able to do a keg stand and like was like,
Could
how do
you do
we?
that? Could you do that cool thing where you take a whole pint of beer like a shot?
Oh yeah,
I'm
definitely.
I'm always
Wait,
jealous
what?
of those people.
When
There
you could
are
just like,
people that can just suck down a whole beer like you take a shot of tequila, like the same.
you just like
And I'm
open your throat.
yeah, and just throw it all into your
TMJ,
stomach.
Candice.
Yeah, it's the TMJ. I'll use that as my excuse. I'm sorry, I just can't get my mouth around the rim.
Steve's gonna be like, why is Candice oming in front of that beer now? She's like, I'm gonna get this beer.
My next piece, why shotgunning a beer is empowering.
What's interesting to me is, and again, this goes back to me just not being a very interesting person, is that when I grew up, like I don't know if it's no, there hasn't been. I don't know if it's a black white thing. I have no idea. I went to a school that was very, and we're talking about like high school time, very mixed, like the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich, like all races. But I never saw any drugs. Like I never, but I will say all the time, at the time also, I was hanging around a lot of like primarily as black people. And I don't know, and maybe I don't know about what was your experience growing up in school, but like drugs were not really a thing. Weed, there was weed, but it was mostly smoking blunts that black people did.
That's all I did.
Okay, but like black and mild blunts. Not even like it was weed and black and mild, and occasionally there was liquor involved, but there was no like heavy. I never saw any like coke or meth or anything like that in high school.
Yeah, I didn't really either. I mean, I saw some of it, but I didn't really. I got drugged and raped like this summer after I graduated from high school, and I was drinking underage at a bar. And then I went to college, and that's when I started hitting like the class A drug. I was more exposed to drugs, and I had some friends from high school who were really into meth, and that was like I mean, at the time it was like speed or whatever we were calling it.
Mhm.
And ecstasy, because I'm 42. And we didn't call it Molly back in my day, kids.
Wait, but it's a different thing, right?
It's pretty much the same thing.
It's the same thing, but
yeah.
This just goes to my naivete and also my age.
I mean, they'll call MDMA, like they had MDMA, which was like the pure form of ecstasy, and then that got called Molly, but Molly is really just ecstasy because most pure MDMA is not pure. It's cut with like a million other things.
And that's why I won't try it, because
it's fun.
Terrified. I've heard, but I'm also terrified of what could be in there. And and I know it's right, an anomaly in that it's not the norm, but people have had really bad, like I read a story about a chick she went brain dead. There was something in hers, and now she's like in a wheelchair and she can't function.
Well, and now with I'm really grateful I got sober in 2013, because I don't know that I would have made it through the last 7 years, because there's like the fentanyl and everything now. They cut everything with that shit. And I would have, in particular, like I've heard horror stories about people who went to go to Vegas to do a bunch of blow, and it was cut with that. And like one guy ended up in a coma and another guy died because they got coke. And I was definitely into like the drinking and blow scene, just being a waitress for most of my 20s. That was like the combo.
That is what I wanted to ask you about, is the restaurant scene. I heard you mention on another podcast that the restaurant scene is really into drugs.
Yeah.
And I worked in restaurants, and I'm still, why do I have this information?
I don't think this is a black white thing. I think you just don't do drugs, and so you don't attract them. And I could find, even now being sober, I'm such an addict in my core. Like I wanted to make a t-shirt that said "Drugs find me." People will like offer me drugs. I've been sober at Coachella, and people are like, "Oh my God, you want some more Molly?" I'm like, I'm not even on anymore.
I'm not even high right now.
You just look like you're on drugs.
You just have Molly face.
Resting Molly face. Even on my YouTube show, everyone's like, "This girl can't be sober. She's got to be drunk and high." I'm like, I think I just sound like I'm drunk or high all the time. that's what maybe why people always offered me drugs. But I do think that if you are somebody that is kind of like straight edge in that way, it's people who have it are gonna not be like, hey, you want
seem
to
like
come
a narc, Candice.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
seem like
she's
a
saying.
snitch.
It's just like-
So
even
you
in
seem like you
comedy,
would-
like it's everywhere in comedy.
I know, but I have not come across cocaine at all.
In
Like
comedy?
no.
What?
I bullshit you not.
My first fucking set at the Comedy Store, they were doing blow in the green room, like every cliche you could ever fucking. I was like, oh, this is real? Like, I didn't think that this was this real or this blatant. That was my first set I ever did as a comic.
I've never seen it. I honestly can say that I don't think I've ever seen someone do cocaine in person. And I've been in comedy for 13 years now. And I've heard stories. What I do know I've seen is people come in high, like they had just done it, and then they showed up to do a spot or whatever. But I've never personally seen it.
Oh man, I could tell. I'm like a detective when I'm out. I'm like, they're doing blow. They're doing blow. I know who's holding what in any bar at all times. I can just, it's years of doing it, but it's also just, it becomes like that second nature. You're kind of just scanning all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe I just don't have the radar for it.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it in comedy. I have been around comedians that are, I have been around comedians that like I'm drinking with, because I drink. Like I am like, I'll go deep into the night just drinking. Like I can hold liquor. But if I'm doing that, weed is the most I'll do, and I'll definitely regret that the next day. But I've been in a situation where it's like, wow, we've been drinking for some hours, and I think that I should call an Uber. And then the person who's also drinking with me, they're nearing the end as well, and then they go to the bathroom and come back with the second and third wind that I'm like,
and you're like,
I'm like, bro, you're on performance enhancers right now.
Yeah.
And I'm still calling my Uber.
You're like, is the bathroom attendant handing out Red Bulls in there?
Yeah.
Truly, cocaine is a performance enhancer for alcoholics.
Yeah.
It's like why I started doing drugs.
Yeah.
But I hear that the high from coke is short, like it's short-lived. Like it only lasts like a half hour or some shit like that.
I mean, if you're smoking crack, maybe.
Is crack a short-lived one?
The thing about crack that's crazy is that you want more before you.
Look at Mal. I love talking about crack.
Candice is like, oh, is crack the short-lived? We're in a lecture right now. Oh,
let me write that down. I'm taking my notes.
I feel like I'm like the dare teacher, or I'm like that fucked up dude that goes to the school and is like, when I was doing crack, and the kids are like, really? Yeah, this is like the innocent, like, what's that like, teacher?
How much should we take? Is there a measurement?
Do I weigh this out? No, you don't. Not when you're scratching for it on the ground and searching for what looks like lint. I found that to be the worst because it's like it's almost like the high is so short, you want more before you even put it down.
Wow.
Like you're like, I want more.
And how addictive is crack? Like on a scale from 1 to adrenochrome.
I'm lucky that I didn't like the way it smelled or tasted. Like I was so turned off the few times that I just hated the way it smelled. I have like looked on the floor for drugs, and those are demoralizing moments in my past that I try to remember. Where you're just like scraping around because I would say that process is very, very addictive. And Coke, I think you can just do. I think the high lasts longer if you're drinking because my experience, like I think one of the last times I did blow alone, and by alone I mean alone by myself and also with no other substances. And I just stared at the ceiling and my heart was racing and I was like, oh, I have a fucking problem. I did it just because it was there.
That's
It
because
was
it was
like,
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. And it was actually really good. And so then I was just there and I didn't have any booze to like bring me down. And usually I used it as like you were saying, it's like a performance enhancer. I'd be drinking all night and usually waiting tables or bartending. You're drinking while you're working and suddenly you're like, oh, I'm fucking wasted. I need to sober up. And it was like my way of sobering up or kind of coming, like that medical
Yeah.
balance,
Yeah.
the chemical balance. And there were years of that. I mean, that's always the funniest thing to me about people when they get sober and you get like all clean and you're like, I'm just like drinking these juice. I'm like, bitch, I saw you fucking doing blow the back of a toilet
Yeah.
in a club. Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate how you think your body is a temple now, but this is a
Yeah.
new phenomenon. Like,
Yeah.
Let's not pretend like you've always been like this. It was a journey. Okay.
yeah, and that's fine.
Some people are trying to gentrify their bodies. Okay. They're trying to push that old shit out. These are new people that live here now.
These are new cells now.
This is a green juice area now.
Yeah, exactly.
This
These
is a
cells do
neighborhood.
yoga.
Yeah, this is a yoga and cold pressed juice neighborhood now.
We got rid of all those crack cells.
Yeah.
No, it was like those, and those were, yeah. I had a weird experience because I started smoking and snorting heroin after I hated meth. I fucking hated meth. I hated it.
Well,
What
what's
is
wrong
that
with
like?
meth?
It made my brain already. What's wrong with
What's
meth?
wrong with meth?
Teacher?
I heard it's great.
I mean, bitches love meth because it makes you skinny.
Oh, I thought all drugs did that though. No,
Nah. I mean,
weed.
some.
not weed.
Not
Because you
weed.
eat snacks.
Yeah.
Because you fucking start eating cookies. hand
Not
over
drinking unless you're
Yeah.
like drinking just vodka.
fist.
Right.
Straight vodka,
Mhm.
Right.
which I have done.
Which I've done too.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went through a phase where I was drinking vodka with water and lemons, and I was pounding that shit like lemonade. It was so good.
I mean,
wow.
that sounds delicious.
It was delicious.
That's a master cleanse. That's all. Put a little cayenne pepper in there with some little sweetener. You got the master cleanse.
I dated a girl. I dated a girl for a few months, and her drink was gin and hot water.
Oh
And
wow.
I
How
was
old was she?
like,
75?
She's
no,
still alive.
no, yeah, she is. We're, I mean, I was early mid 20s, and I was like, whoa,
This is
this
tea.
is pretty good. This is tea, exactly. I was like, this is
A hot
like
toddy.
a hot toddy, but with less ingredients. I just need some water and a
Oh
microwave.
no, sounds terrible. I don't like the taste of gin.
Ugh.
It is delicious.
I hated
like
gin.
Yeah.
Gin makes you sin, man. Every time I drank gin, I was a maniac. I had to just. There were certain alcohols that like did different things to you. You know, whiskey makes you frisky. I loved whiskey. I was definitely more of like a whiskey girl.
I like
than I was.
whiskey.
Gin made me bonkers out. It made me like angry. Gin really brought
Really?
out the like rage in me.
Normally people say that with tequila.
I became a wife
Yeah.
beater when I drank gin. Like
Bridget gets
instantly.
arrested for domestic violence. Like, what happened? She was just at the bar. I don't know what happened.
Just wearing my white tank top, no
Yeah.
bra. Like I thought this was America.
Yeah.
Tequila didn't, that was my go-to drink when I was bartending because you could just take those shots so quickly and easily without really noticing. And
Mhm.
the smell of Patron now makes me fucking want to gag because I
Yeah.
drank so much
So
of
much
it.
of it.
Yeah, I was working at so the parlor before it was the parlor
Oh
was
yeah.
El Guapo. which
Yes,
is
I remember that. Yeah.
I worked at El Guapo, and it was a fucking shit show. That place was strippers in the courtyard, and the like Sunday afternoon, like people would come in with
Wow.
like to have like to take tacos with their family, and there'd be like fucking dudes throwing money at strippers.
Welcome to LA.
It was fucking wild, and they had these like beer pong tournaments for like entire weekends.
Hilarious.
It was wild, but that was some of the. I was just telling this story recently, like just how crazy that scene was. I was considered a like veteran staff member after being there for 6 months. Like the turnover
Hilarious.
was so
Wow.
high. You would train a waitress and she would have a meltdown and be gone like 1 month later. Because no one lasted.
Was that just because it was such a wild environment?
It was, I was talking about this because I was thinking about all the people that come to LA with these big dreams and like what actually happens to them.
Sad.
Where they go, where they end up, what happens, where do they, I would love to be like God's eye view of all these girls that come and they hope to be actresses and they end up on drugs or like in porn. It's a bad scene.
It's very bad. I don't think people understand how often that happens, but it happens
more often than not.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah,
more people end up in
totally.
that than become successful at what they came out here to do.
Yeah,
The
because they're just
women,
go on.
I was going to say the women end up on drugs or in porn, and then the dudes end up wearing Captain America suits down on Hollywood
Oh
Boulevard
man, I'd rather end up in
on
porn.
drugs. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
For sure.
When I first moved to LA, I lived in the Valley, and this was when I was right out of rehab after this. I got out of rehab and then came to LA, which I don't recommend. And
Yeah, that's tough.
I
You're like going right back to the source.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking exactly. I lived in this, it was like a kind of valley version of Melrose Place, one of those where there's like a pool in the middle and
Yeah.
the characters in that place would have been a hilarious but tragically dark comedy. Like there was the guy who worked at Universal and he would dress up like Frankenstein, and then there was a guy across the way who was a lawyer but also a coke dealer for like C-list Valley porn stars, and we would stay up until like 4:00 in the morning playing dominoes for
Jesus.
every single night.
It's like if Ryan Murphy were to remake Melrose Place.
Yeah, or like
without like murder, but like just the darkness and the sex and the drugs.
Yeah, it was like, or like Basket's version of Melrose Place.
Yes.
Like something just so depressing and dark about it, but also kind of hilarious. And there was a woman above us who was a legitimate schizophrenic, and she would always be like, "Well, we're going to the grocery store now," talking in like the we plural.
You're like, Tracy, it's just you here.
Yeah, no. It was wild. That was just a interesting. I think about that a lot because I think about where all of those people are. They all came out here with dreams. I think any town that attracts people with dreams
it's true.
It's like New York City too.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I've always said this, but like what you're saying with the type of people that move out to these types of places are usually because they're in search of something. Like there's something that, and it's more often than not, it's because of some type of neglect or something happened in their childhood, and now they're like seeking fame, and they want some type of like. They want validation. They just want validation because they didn't have that growing up. And so they come out here thinking, oh, if I am an actor or whatever, but it's like, okay, we need to go to therapy first. let's handle that. And then if you really like the craft of acting or comedy or whatever, we can then pursue, or modeling or whatever, we can pursue that. But let's handle what's going on here first. But no, these cities attract that.
Yeah. Also
go on.
You can go.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm so grateful I was not hot enough to be a model, because man, that world is as dark as it gets. That shit.
That and music, hip hop, and all music just in general. That whole scene is worse than what happens than what we experience. I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that LA and New York are definitely they're storybook cities, you know? And I think that people move to these cities with dreams, but without um a plan and oftentimes skills to achieve that dream. So it's just like,
Mhm.
well, I dream that I could be this famous person, and then that's it. And so they just show up and they're like, well, what do I do? And I think LA in particular, I've noticed from just, meeting people and we all watch it happen. It's like people that don't know themselves or have an idea of how they're going to get to what they're getting to or the skills really, that city has a way of just turning you
Ugh.
into like the worst version of yourself,
Yeah.
because you're just in search of this dream and you'll do anything to get there. And it's just like, well, let me take this person that doesn't know who they are and I'm just going to turn them into
Yeah.
this
And
other being.
Yeah.
it's even worse when you get out here and something comes quickly. Let's say you move out here and then you book something immediately, and then
Hmm.
you get that you ride that wave for like a year or two, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
That's the person on a lot of occasions that's just like they're desperate at that point because they're like,
It's
I
sad
was on a
too.
show for 2 years. I can't go work at
Yeah.
Ralph's. So
Yeah.
now I have
Yeah.
to do everything else to try and survive. And it's an ego thing, but it's a humbling thing at the same time. And there's a way to survive that. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
great, what's Elvin? I don't know what Jeffrey from the Cosby Show. He
Hmm.
was he was seen working at Trader Joe's like a
Oh
year.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like he was such like I remember seeing him. I was like, oh, that's Elvin.
Yeah.
Like he's like to me like an iconic, like that's Elvin. And then to find out that he's working at Trader Joe's, but he knew what he had to do to survive. So like
Yeah.
ego is such a huge part of it. If you can balance
Huge.
your ego, you'll be fine. And then he started working again after that. So
Yeah. Well, because he went viral, I think, and people were kind of like poor shaming him, and then it was
Mm.
like the way people talk. It's just so
it was
stupid.
awful.
Yeah,
Insidious.
the opposite
Yeah.
happened to me, where I started writing for Playboy, and then that column started doing pretty well, but I was still waiting tables, and people would be like, "Hey, aren't you that girl that writes for Playboy?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." Can I get you more iced tea? You know,
Would you like some mozzarella sticks?
Yeah.
that was and it was good. I liked it. I think it took me a long time to it's interesting for me to contemplate the level of delusion that it takes to do what we do, because I always
Yeah,
say, like, the difference between delusions and dreams is hard work.
for
So
sure.
it takes
Right.
a certain amount of delusion to even believe that it's such a small percentage. And part of the problem in LA is that, and New York, is you're always like 1 or 2 degrees away from somebody who has succeeded
Yep.
or has
Hmm.
that fame, or you're adjacent enough to it that it kind of tricks you into thinking, well, this can happen to me too, or I can succeed. And so much of it is just like right face, right place, right time.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm
Right.
trying to
And
say.
it's so much worse now too, because now before, when we first started, social media wasn't like a huge thing. And now it's like, so you just had to like sometimes be around people that were successful. But then when you went home, you could feel somewhat better about yourself because you're not next to someone who's working every night of the week and comparing yourself to their success. But now it's like you go on social media and people feel so badly about themselves all the time because they're like, oh, everyone's flexing and flossing, showing what they're doing. And then it's like, how can a person who's not where they want to be feel good about themselves seeing someone else living their dreams? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And,
Like you
and
can't escape it anymore unless you're just off
there's
those platforms.
yeah, there's no escape. Yeah. That's what I
Yeah.
was gonna say. It's just like you have to, unless you have, it's self-control,
For
it's just
sure.
like sort of, what you learn when you're getting over addiction, I assume, is just like you have to get control of it and have some perspective. And I think that it's hard for people to get a wide angle view on what's happening sometimes because they're just fucking right here and
Yeah.
in it. And I felt some of that in this past summer when I wasn't working and I'm just sitting at home and it's like, but you go on Instagram and it's like, why, like everyone else is still somehow happy and thriving during this shit, like, and then there's self-doubt and then you beat yourself up, and I was like, this is not healthy. Let me get
Yeah.
off of this. And that's when I got off of Instagram for like 2 months, and I
Yeah.
felt fucking great. It's just like, oh, it's not.
And yet it's this double-edged sword, because if you're in this industry,
You
now
have to be on
everything
there.
is dependent
Yeah.
on like how big is your platform,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
so that it's like this messed up, and there's this kind of that phrase of like, keep your eyes on your own paper, and it
Mhm.
is increasingly hard to do when people are shoving the paper in your face if you're just
Right.
going on your social media, other than completely disengaging from social media, which
Yeah.
you, as we mentioned, can't really do if you're
Can't do it.
trying to
Yeah.
be in entertainment and have a career.
Right.
And a lot of the times, if you're getting booked for something, or if they're looking at you for a job, they'll say, okay, we have two people who we like the same, who's got the biggest platform. It like just literally comes down to who can help us market our product
Absolutely.
for us and have more reach.
Yeah.
And so there's that. I've watched so many people go insane. It drives people crazy.
Yep.
And I don't think, this is why I hate Instagram in general, though. And I do kind of defer to Twitter, even though Twitter is horribly toxic and somewhat abusive.
It's
all
so
the time.
hostile.
It's hostile, but I can deal with hostile. It's the phoniness of Twitter, like or of Instagram, the veneer of kind of,
Yep.
I've got my shit together, my life is great, it's a presentation.
Yep.
And that
Mhm.
to me is like more offensive than somebody being a dick.
Yeah.
I spent like 10 minutes. I outsourced my Instagram because I can't handle it. And I spent 10 minutes on Instagram, and I was like, I don't know how you there's all these beautiful, I'm instantly like, I'm old, I'm wrinkled, I'm ugly, I need to lose
No, I
30
know.
pounds, I need to be funnier, I don't have enough
Yeah.
followers on this platform, my hair looks like shit. How
know.
come
Mhm.
it's like I'm instantly less
I
than.
mean, it's
Yeah.
the difference. It's the difference between what is Twitter now, 240 characters, and a picture that tells 1,000 words.
Right.
It's like, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Even if it's like
really what it comes
1,000
down to.
lies.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Right.
those are all words, and
Yeah.
it's like, and it's the way we interpret what we're looking at, which is why I kind of only go on like twice a day. Like, I used to post and then check, oh, what are people saying about this? And now it's
Yeah.
like, fucking post because you want to post, and it'll do what it does. And
Yeah.
that's like what I tell myself, so I'm not consistently. I have a son. It's like I have to fucking watch him. I don't need to be like, oh, what are people saying? What are people saying about my stupid video or picture I just put out? It's like,
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of that. I see that at like when people are at parks all the time. Like, you know how easy it would be to like snatch your child while you're looking at Instagram?
yeah,
And
yeah,
how would you live with yourself? You're like, what were you doing when your kid was kidnapped? Oh, I
yeah.
was like just looking at
Oh.
I was
Instagram,
just scrolling, just
just
doing a scroll.
scrolling, checking out my competition and
Yeah,
like stupid videos. And
yeah,
it would be like you would hate yourself forever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's a complete shit show.
It is. So it is. It's
Do you-
definitely like, I'm grateful too that I got, sober. Twitter and comedy were part of the reasons that I got sober, because in 2013, I was started in 2010. I loved it. I was grinding, and it was something I just wanted to get better at. And then I traveled around the world, and I was trying to convince myself that I was going to be like a teacher, teaching kids like English abroad. I'm like, I'm giving up on all these dreams. And then everywhere I went in the world, I was like, this would be such a good bit. This would be such a good bit. And I
couldn't get rid of it.
yeah, I couldn't just get rid of that bug. So then I decided to come back, but I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to drink moderately in that industry, just in that scene. And it's like the restaurant industry. And
because of your addictive personality.
yeah. And I was on Twitter, and I was drinking, and I was like, this was like the spring and summer of 2013. And I kept joking about how I was an alcoholic. And I'm like, at a certain point, I had to look at that, and I remember being like, how many jokes about being an alcoholic am I going to make before I really realize, like, oh, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, which
And
I think that's a really interesting point, because I think that why it's dangerous for comedians, because we're self-deprecating a lot of the
Yeah.
time. So it's like, and that's what we get a lot of our jokes from, is from laughing at ourselves, but how that can enable the behavior. Because if you're like, this is what I do, is I laugh at this, and if I subtract this factor from the formula, if I get rid of the drinking, my whole stand-up is now going to change, because
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's become kind of my personality and my persona, who I present and make fun of and get all my material from.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
and also, by the way, who the fuck am I without it anyway?
Right.
Aside
Yeah.
from comedy, like I don't even know what that person looks like.
Right.
And so between Twitter and just knowing all these kind of personal things, and then comedy was a big, I also knew I'd probably end up getting a DUI. I'm like, there's just no way I'm not going to get a DUI if I'm doing
Right.
stand up in LA. I'm there. One of the times that I bombed, like the worst, most traumatic bomb, and that I can still feel in my
Where was it?
at the Comedy Store, of course. On the main stage. It was like one of those bringer shows that I was doing pretty early on, and I had been having an affair with this dude. I was the other woman, and he came and brought like 12 friends, and I was more nervous than like doing stand up in front of 7,000 people. And
Oh my gosh.
they kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And there was all this drama before the show, because the guy who booked the show wanted to sleep with my friend, and she like rejected him. So then he tried to boot me off the show.
Of
And
course.
then, yeah. And then the dude, like it just got ugly. And then I kept drinking and drinking while I was waiting, because I was just waiting and getting, I thought I only had like 2 or 3, but I think I had like 5 or 6. And by
Oh,
the time
snap.
I got up, I stood on stage, and I stood there. I don't even know how long it was. And I just was like, I'm cold and afraid.
Wow.
Wait,
I completely
that's what you said?
Yeah. I totally blanked. I just said, and I think they thought it was a joke, but I was
Well, yeah, Bridget, the whole audience is on there. They're like, this is brilliant.
They're
What's
like, oh.
the punchline
And she's like, no, I'm just
now?
cold
I'm
and
cold
afraid.
and afraid.
I'm cold and
what
afraid.
else?
And then I
Where?
tried and I stumbled, and then I got music. And do you remember Gary Garfinkel?
No.
He was really good friends with Polly, and he ran like the Showtime comedy department. So he
Okay.
commissioned a lot of like Brad Williams stand-up special, and he was always running around, and he was just such a good man. And somehow I met him, and we became friends, and he was like at the Comedy Store that night and saw that set, and
Oh
he
no.
was like, that was like I forget what he said. It was just like, but then I was crying, and I'm like, that was so humiliating. And he said to me, Bridget, it is not the comedians who get, and I was wasted, just sloppy crying. And he said, I'll never forget it the next day when we were talking. He's like, it's not the comedians who get up when they do well. It's the comedians who get up after sets like that become comedians.
It's facts.
Yeah.
That's facts 100%. Because yeah,
That is true.
literally like the worst has happened. So if you can,
What's your
come
most
back after that.
traumatizing set? I want to hear both of you.
Do I?
Any set in the improv lab is a tragedy. Here's one that comes
Facts.
to mind. Here's one that comes to mind. Just and I'll tell this story because Candice was there.
We'll
I'm
make this the
showcasing-
last, because we'll be at an hour after this. So we'll wrap it up with this.
So I'm showcasing. This is a callback for Montreal.
Oh.
And it's in
Oh,
the
yeah.
lab, which they put. I'm convinced they put these showcases in the lab because they want you to fucking fail. And
They do. They do.
That room is cursed.
It's awful.
awful. So it's packed full of industry people for this callback, and I go on stage. I think I'm second or third on the lineup, and I'm doing my thoughtful jokes that I've crafted for this showcase. And people are actively texting and not watching the show, and I got so mad. Like I I got
I
so
remember
mad.
this.
I got so mad. I hit a punchline that I thought was legitimately good, and I didn't get the response I wanted, and I called the crowd stupid, but not in like a fun way. Like they could tell it
No.
was real.
Like
And
hostile.
yeah,
Oh,
I think I called them stupid like probably 7 more times in the 6 minutes, whatever it was, and then walked off stage. And my manager was there, and he was embarrassed. And I think I went home immediately. No, I watched Candice. Candice went like 2 after me, and then I went home because I was just like, this was so bad. Like I was bombing hard, and I like felt
you
bad, and
also
I
weren't the
also
only one.
right,
You
right.
weren't
I
the
think
only one.
I went after other people who had good sets, but they weren't getting response, but they had the professionalism to just fucking power through,
Yeah.
and I didn't. And so I really fucking bombed and then continued to bomb. And I think I went home because a couple of comedians that were in there came up to me and said good set, and that's the thing I hated the most about LA is like everyone knows when they bomb.
The
Yeah.
fakeness.
Just fucking don't say anything. Like I know it wasn't
Some
good.
people don't know when they bomb though. That's
That
also creepy.
I
the
guess,
delusion is
yeah.
real. Oh, some people
Yeah.
don't. The delusion
Yeah.
is real for sure.
Yeah. Hey, good set up there. What fucking set were you watching,
Were you
dude? And
Yeah.
then I
watching?
just called the whole industry stupid
Yeah.
7 times and
And
expected to get into this festival.
and people don't understand that when Mal calls you stupid, like the
Cuts to the soul.
condescension that just emotes from his whole energy is just like because you're all idiots. Like that was the subtext of what he was saying while he was up there. It's like, if you guys were not fucking morons, you'd be laughing harder at these jokes, and you could feel it. Like it was palpable. It was so good.
How was your
I
set?
enjoyed it. It was fine. Like I don't remember it being bad or good. It was just a lab set, and I
She
think I
followed
did get
me, Bridget. Anything after my set was fucking amazing that night.
I did get a call back. I did get a call back. But
I made careers that night, Bridget.
Candice has me to thank for all of her success. My worst one that I don't know if it's my worst one, but it resonates with me because I think I stopped doing comedy after it for like a year and a half.
No, I don't think I got back on stage after mine for like 6 months.
Yeah.
It spooked me like falling off a horse.
Yeah, and it should though. But the people who it doesn't spook, I wonder about them because I'm like, did you not feel it? Were you not? Again, is it the delusion thing? Were you not
They're
there?
like that dude who climbed El Cap with no rope. Just like he must have no fear. And then they did a study. It's like, oh, it turns out he actually does have something wrong with his brain. He feels no fear.
Sociopath for sure. You know what's crazy, Bridget? I woke up thinking about that guy today. I bullshit you not. I woke up thinking about him, like visualizing him doing that, and now here you are talking about it. That's
weird.
Shit like this has been happening to me a lot. But yeah, my experience was I was at the Laugh Factory. I was doing chocolate sundaes. Pookie, who booked it, Pookie Wigington, and this is probably in 2008. I think that's around when I quit, and I had a set, and I don't know. Have you ever done black rooms before, Bridget?
Yeah.
So they're difficult, and that's not a stereotype. It's just facts. It's just there is a confidence from the audience.
Yeah.
If you do not have that, if you don't have confidence bigger than the audience, you probably will fail. And so.
Yeah.
It's the attitude they go to
now
the show
imagine
with,
being white doing it.
Well, imagine being black but looking white.
Yeah.
And then talking to people. So it's like there's an attitude in black rooms of like arms crossed.
Yeah.
You better be funny, make me laugh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Prove it. They
I feel like they give a wide berth to white people though. I feel like give because they give you points for going up in front of them. Like, look at this brave motherfucker.
I do agree.
When you go on stage looking like Candice or sounding like me, ooh.
Yeah, you're a black person that like sounds like a white person. That means you're a sellout. You sold out, right? So they're already against you. So I did my set and it was not good. And it was just a 3-minute, because he didn't give me a spot on the full chocolate sundae showcase yet. This was like my audition to get onto the chocolate sundae, where you get like a 10-minute set or something like that. And so I had it, and it wasn't like the worst set ever. Like, it's nothing that I look back like embarrassed about. It just wasn't a good set. Like, I just was probably too in my head, reciting word for word, like what my jokes were, instead of being present, and just being in the moment. And so I got off stage, and the booker, Pookie, was like, that wasn't funny. Like, came up to me and was like, that wasn't good. You're not, I think he even said specifically, you're not funny.
Oh my God.
And then but older Candice, also in retrospect, I'm like, okay, first I have to also put this in context that Pookie at one point tried to like holler at me, and I shot him down. And now this was him seeing me not do well, and he took an opportunity to now neg me, make me feel even worse about myself, which is, Bridget, something we had to deal with regularly in life, but especially in comedy, was like getting booked and you hurt the booker's feelings. And now it's like, oh, I can't perform there now because you have this vendetta because I wouldn't sleep with you or give you the time of day. So that's a whole thing we have to work with as well. But so I remember, and I don't say I didn't stop because of him.
Similar to how I feel about the Montreal Comedy Festival.
Correct.
Honestly, I'd rather put up with that than be on an all-female lineup.
Please don't get me started on those. I hate gimmicks. I hate all gimmicks. But yeah, I didn't stop because of Pookie specifically. What made me feel defeated was like, oh, if this is what I have to deal with in this industry,
fuck it.
I don't know if I necessarily want to do this anymore. And I was like, if I have to deal with people just getting mad at me or getting revenge and hurting my feelings intentionally, because I come from a solid family. Like, I didn't grow up with, moving to LA was such a culture shock for me, because I met the worst people, and people that I didn't know existed. Like, I dated people that I've only seen in like movies and villains, and dated these people and been like, oh shit. So like, it was a huge wake up call for me. And then it just got to a point where I was like, I'm not gonna let anybody, like, I have a gift for a reason. Like, I know how to make people laugh. And I was like, I'm not gonna let anybody. So, and I just, after I quit for like a year and a half, but was still like dabbling with like auditioning, and like I wrote and produced like a short film and whatever, but I wasn't in comedy. And then I came back after Ian Edwards gave me a little like talk. He incensed me with a comment that he made, because I told him that I wanted to help. I asked him if he'd help me write a joke, and he was like, for what? And I was like, because
I love Ian.
He's so honest.
I love Ian.
Brutally honest. And you don't find that out in LA very often, people that tell you the truth. And so I was like,
tell me.
You mean to tell me you want me to help you with a joke? And you're not even a comic? Yeah, like that was exactly what he was like, yeah, for what? And I was like, well, because I want to work on this joke. And he was like, why? You're not a comic. And that, I felt it in my soul, what he said, because I knew in my gut that I was one, but he was right. Like, I wasn't
working on it.
I wasn't doing anything. And so as soon as he had that talk with me, it was 2000, that was the end of 2009, 2010, I started grinding for the first time in comedy. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I started going to the store. That's probably around, I don't know what year we met, but in that time. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Comedy, guys. I don't recommend it.
No. I just interviewed, my past 3 podcasts have been with comedians, and I actually want to get both of you, each of you on as well, because I'm pretty much just leaning into the new year with comedians because I think we need it. But the conversation always ends up to like, how did you start comedy? Like, Adrienne Appalucci. Appalucci, fucking genius, and has been grinding forever, and is so fucking dark and funny. But she was like, I think you just convinced me to quit comedy. Because I'm like, what are your dreams? She's like, she's already been doing this since like 20 years almost. And it's like, Bridget, I can ask you
my dreams. I should have accomplished at least one of them by now.
And like Sarah Talamash and I had a great conversation about it, and just like Ryan Long, who's came here from, he's crafty and
Yeah.
savvy little motherfucker. That one, he's just good. New York comedians crack me up too because they're just so cool.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, I feel bad for New York. I mean, I feel bad for everybody right now, but
Oh, I do miss it though.
we will power through, guys. We will power
I miss
through.
it so much. Yeah.
This is as close as we can get to hanging out in a green room.
No, I
That's what it feels
know.
like. This feels like the green
know.
room hang or the bar hang after the
Yeah.
sets.
Only thing that's missing is the cocaine.
It was always missing for you, apparently.
It was. Change that, guys. I'm gonna find it. That's gonna be on my vision board. Just gonna a pile of white powder on my vision board, and maybe I can manifest.
Stay away from drugs, Candice. Candice becomes a drug addict at like 45.
Yeah.
Like,
I have been smoking a lot of weed in quarantine.
You get one person to quit comedy and one person to start hard drugs. You got a weird power, Bridget. You got a weird power.
I have been over this past, not all of quarantine. I just started, I guess, because this was the first Christmas I didn't spend with my family, like my first Christmas ever, like my whole entire life. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna get high. And so for the 2 weeks after that, because we were on hiatus with the show, I literally was getting high, I think, every day. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad. I was like, maybe I can be a pothead.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
New Year's goals.
New Year's goals become a pothead.
Mm-hmm.
Not hard.
You
It
guys,
really isn't.
this was fantastic.
So fun.
Thank you. This was amazing. This was the first recording for the new year, and I think we started off on the right foot, guys. Good job. Good job.
Blowjobs and drugs.
Blowjobs and drugs. You guys, thank you for tuning in. If you have not subscribed, make sure you do that. We're on all podcast platforms. Rate and review us on iTunes. And if you have not subscribed, told someone, make sure you do that. Because, just tell somebody. Just tell somebody. Jokes by Candice on social media. Mal, one more time, where can everyone find you?
malhall.com. Unnecessary at Mal Hall twice a day on Instagram and Mal Hall TV on YouTube.
And Bridget, one more time.
At Bridget Phetasy on Twitter and Instagram, and pretty much anywhere. You can just Google Phetasy and find my YouTube channel and Walk-ins Welcome, which both of you are going to have to come on.
Anytime.
Yeah.
We got all the time in the world. What are we doing?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.